Hello, this is Angela Elston, and this is my assignment presentation 1 for LTech 5030 Foundations of Learning Technologies. Mobile learning implementation, overcoming barriers in global enterprise training. This is just an overview of the problem that we had, our problem situation, and I think we all know it pretty well. There were 250 training modules to deliver mobily across 20 countries, and it requires addressing significant barriers in technology competence and multilingual content alignment. A successful implementation depends on appropriate technology selection, comprehensive training programs, and mobile optimized instructional design. Learning analytics will provide critical metrics for measuring training, guiding continuous improvement. So our problem overview, of course, there were 250 training modules for smartphone delivery with a 90% of courses delivered via mobile. That's what the target was for management. The course topics were Microsoft Office and inventory management. Employee challenges. A lot of employees were had limited experience with online and mobile learning. There is a global scope where there were 23 countries, including 5 languages: English, French, German, Japanese, and Spanish. The management needs, they wanted to assess the mobile competency of courses and efficacy metrics. The key barriers to implementation. Barrier 1 is user technology competence. Employees lack experience with online courses and smartphones and requires effective training on device usage and LMS navigation. It directly impacts comprehension and retention of course material. So that was the first key barrier. The second one is barrier 2 is multilingual content alignment, and I felt like this would be the biggest barrier of all for this program. Would be maintaining uniform standards across 5 languages, ensuring consistent quality across 23 countries, and preventing operational inefficiencies from misaligned training. When you think about an organization this big, that I can imagine that would be very hard to keep everything in alignment so that everyone in every country and every language was getting the same content. And so I think that would be the biggest design challenge, because you would need a team of graphic designers that could work in those 5 different languages and work with each other to make sure that the content was the same. But I think that could be the biggest issue for the company. Another implementation factor is appropriate technology selection. So device selection considerations were alignment with learning and performance goals, compatibility with employee characteristics as well, and then accessibility features for employees with disabilities. That's one thing that would be important that you would want to take into consideration. And then you would want to have integration capability with chosen learning management systems. And so you would have to make sure that you were using the appropriate technologies so that the learners could get whatever they needed. And then here comes my flowchart. So at the core of it, we have mobile-friendly course design and pedagogy. And so, of course, the courses would have to be designed in a way that they were able to be delivered very well using that smartphone. And the instructional designers would need to keep in mind that, of course, it's going to be delivered on a smartphone, and then align their pedagogy to that so that learners could get the type of interactions that they would need in that format to make it engaging and a good learning experience. Of course, underneath that in my circle, I have a uniformity in course content across languages, because I felt like that could be the biggest issue. That could be a downfall, is if you didn't achieve uniformity. Like I've said before, that's just a lot of different languages and a lot of different places that you're training people in. And you can imagine when you're training people from 23 different countries, they would be coming from all different types of cultures. And I just imagine that it would be hard to get them, to get the course alignment just right. So I think that would take a lot of time for the design team. So, of course, uh, the first thing that we would have to have is the appropriate technology, and that's on the left. And so I think that would be the first thing that they would really need to plan on is figuring out what type of technology would be the best and picking out a learning management system and what type of handheld smartphone would be best for them to use as well. One thing that would be beneficial since the company is going to be purchasing the devices, they could provide them with all the same device. I think that would be the best choice because that way, whenever they're doing the tutorials and training people how to use the smartphones, they wouldn't have to make as many tutorials. They could use one tutorial on one smartphone. And also, it would just make the alignment for the graphic designers to know exactly what it's going to look like at the end and if it's going to be compatible. I think it would be best to use the same phone for all of the employees if possible. Of course, this is across all of those different countries, and so that might be a bit of a challenge. Um, but I think that they could do it. So So of course you would have to have them select the appropriate technology, and then the instructional designers would work on the mobile-friendly course design and pedagogy, which would be uniform in its content across the languages. And then with all of that, then they could start to build technology capacity in the workforce. So the workforce would need training in the learning management system, and they would also need training in the use of the smartphones. So, of course, I talked about how they could do that through tutorials and also pre assess and see what their employees are coming in with, what kind of knowledge they already have to gauge what they need to do, what they need to learn the most, and how they could provide that training best. Okay, so now the mobile learning benefits. There were a lot of mobile learning benefits that I found that were really interesting. Learning without location limitations, of course, efficient study with powerful search capabilities, and of course, the flexibility to study anytime and anywhere. So there were a lot of benefits that I saw for mobile learning. And definitely using smartphones is a way that a lot of people are getting their learning done. So it seems like a wonderful choice for the company. Implementation factor, building technology competency. So the smartphone training requirements would make sure that people knew the basic device operation for those without prior exposure. They would have standardized training possible with uniform device distribution and then a gradual skill development approach. And then the learning management system training, they would need to know how to navigate the course delivery platform. They would need to have tutorials as effective competency builders and readiness assessments to gauge the adoption ease and training needs. Okay. Another implementation factor would be content design and localization. We would have mobile-friendly design principles. The content would be optimized for small screens. You would need to have efficient navigation for mobile interfaces, appropriate media formats for mobile consumption. And also, we would have multilingual content development. A team of multilingual instructional designers would need to have content alignment across the 5 languages and think about cultural adaptation while meeting consistent learning objectives and create a mobile-friendly pedagogy. There would have to be a systematic approach to implementation. So that would be an integrated implementation strategy, technology training and content as interconnected components, coordinated deployment across all elements. They would need to be consistent with user experience across all languages and locations. Success factors, appropriate technology selection, comprehensive competency building, uniform content across language, and a systematic implementation approach. Critical resources. So then they would also need to have resources with mobile technology, the skilled multilingual instructional designers. You would have to have sufficient time for training, competency development, mobile friendly learning management systems, and analytic tools for efficacy measurement. Um, the assumption would be that the technology integration is a process requiring time before the full benefits are realized. So, of course, the employees would have to learn how to use their new technological tools. And as they did that, they would be learning content. And of course, as they get more versed in how to use the technology, uh, the content will come more easily for them once they learn how to use those systems better. The last thing I wanted to include was the learning analytics table. I wanted to include discourse analysis, which is analyzing the thinking of individuals and comparing it to the thinking of other learners. And the one that I found was the MAXQDA. It can be used to evaluate levels of understanding and then also learning modeling. So, analyzing the process of individual learners and comparing it to the process of similarly situated learners. Okay, and then my last page is my reference page. Thank you so much.